Yes, it's you again. Well, here we go with another podcast from your friends at Radio 2. Whole bunch of sins coming up. Might provoke a thought in your mind as well. Is there something you've done? Is there something you'd like to tell us? confessions@bbc.co.uk. Anyway, this week we get a listener's loopy lyrics. I'm involved in that one. A long time ago. A flighty feathered friend, a constable's culinary cruelty, and a Spanish sausage saga. That could be Mexican, but that wouldn't work. Gather round for another Drive Time Confession. Yours, please, to confessions@bbc.co.uk. Simon and the Forgiveness Collective. Well, I'm here to seek absolution for my sin from you, but everybody, really, but particularly you, Simon.
Oh,
From
this
you,
is yes.
Personally, for indeed you are the very one sinned against many years ago.
Is this a personal Simon outside work or work at Simon at work?
My story goes back to decades, in fact, to a time when you were on Radio 1. There you go, there's the answer to your question.
Who is this person? We haven't said their name.
So you're on... Oh, yes. Did I not? It's from Ginny. I do beg your pardon. Ginny, thank you very much indeed. So you're on Radio 1, you're doing the breakfast show. You had a long-running quiz called the Identique quiz. Now, before I take you down memory lane to the dim and distant past, there is something I must explain. You are no doubt familiar with the famous hit song Africa by Toto. This splendid anthem contains the marvellously memorable line, "Sure as Kilimanjaro rises like Olympus above the Serengeti," or as they say, Serengeti. Well, this one phrase obviously made a big impression on my subconscious because for many years I somehow laboured under the misapprehension that this pop masterpiece was actually called Kilimanjaro and managed, amazingly, for decades to remain spectacularly ignorant of the fact that the gorgeous song in question is actually Africa. So, to the Identique quiz, you will remember, which I do, that the object of the quiz was to correctly guess the name of a hit song by means of you and your cohorts on the programme acting a short scene which cryptically led listeners to the title. Upon hearing your audio sketch, keen listeners would ring in daily with their answers, often guessing correctly in a matter of days, but sometimes these clues would roll on and on for weeks, during which a daily guess from an avid listener proved to be incorrect. This is true.
This is the day of competitions, everyone.
That's right. This is the kind of competition that's been killed by social media because now instantly everyone would get it and they'd share it and that would be it. One of these Identique sketches proved infernally difficult to solve. I am sure you'll remember. There was the sound of a boat being tossed at sea, oars dipping in the water, and some apparently frightened German voices shouting, "Ja!" and some impending disaster threatening to overwhelm them. I can't remember exactly how long we were subjected to this daily audio picture. However, I do obviously remember exclaiming triumphantly to my husband Jerry, "I know this one! Obviously it's Kill a Man, Ja, Row, Kilimanjaro." I decided to ring in the undeniably, manifestly correct answer and put everyone out of our misery. So began a long period of weeks where I would set our alarm early, ring the number proffered on air, and sit patiently listening to the engaged tone and pressing redial again and again, waiting to get through and claim my prize. What was the prize, says Jen? I can't remember. It was we added an album token every day. So if it went on if it went on for 25 days...
25 albums?
25 album tokens.
Heavens.
Anyway, eventually the great day came. Rising early and yawning, I hauled myself to my daily position, bent over the telephone, a few familiar, tedious bleeps of engaged, redial, and then, joy of joys, a ringing tone. It rang and rang, and to my indescribable joy, my call was answered. I excitedly explained my answer, and the operative on the other end of the line gave me the thrilling news I was going live onto the show to speak to your very self, and I could hardly contain my excitement as my moment of triumph loomed large in my mind. At last, the moment arrived. I was live on air for the nation to hear. You and me, Simon, a little preamble, and then you invited me to deliver my coup de grace. "Kilimanjaro by Toto!" I exclaimed victoriously. It's hard to describe my astonishment and barely contained fury when not only was I greeted with what I now realise was a slightly puzzled, plain and bland, "No." But you didn't even congratulate me on the brilliance of my answer, even though it was incorrect. Of course, I was blissfully unaware of exactly how wrong it was, as no such song actually existed. I think I responded with a somewhat nonplussed and indignant, "Oh." Before I found myself bidding you goodbye, my dreams of kudos in tatters, my accolades shattered in the gutter, and not even so much as a pat on the back. I angrily returned to the bedroom to unreasonably berate my restlessly dozing husband as the only outlet for my frustration. I believe that particular episode of the quiz continued for many days after that sorry morning, till finally the nation was indeed put out of its misery, and someone guessed the ultimate resolution, as I remember it, was Yamo be there, as in, Ya, Moby, there.
Oh.
James Ingram and Michael McDonald.
Yeah.
But for me, the nightmare was not over. For many, many years afterwards, I somehow continued to exist in blissful ignorance of the true appellation of Toto's best-loved ditty. It was, in fact, some 15 years later, 15, when one blameless sunny Saturday morning, Jerry, my husband, was enjoying a peaceful lie-in while I wallowed in a leisurely hot bath in the adjacent bathroom with the door open so I could hear Radio 2. The familiar strains of the once much-loved Toto song greeted my ears. I'd rather fallen out of love with it in the intervening years, as the complete indifference which you had greeted my brilliance all those years ago somewhat still rankled. It may be true to say I hated you a little bit. However, as the song drew to a close, and I'm outside now. However, as the song drew to a close, my reverie was rudely interrupted as I heard Graham Norton's fateful words saying, "Great song, Africa by Toto." It's hard to describe the anguished howl that erupted from my vulnerable and naked form as I wailed from the depths of my humiliation, "Africa! It's Africa! No!" Jerry, to his credit, leapt from his bed and came running into the bathroom to see what ailed me. He listened attentively while covering my burning face with my anguished hands, and no thought for the rest of my modesty. I explained to him that the cause of my extreme discombobulation taking him back to those sleepless mornings of yesteryear. He hovered over me, listening in concerned silence for the merest moment or two, before his knees buckled and he doubled up in hysterics. He then returned to the sanctuary of his bed, the occasional gale of unpleasantly gleeful braying laughter reaching my reddened ears. And so, it's not from Toto I seek forgiveness for not knowing what their song was called, nor even from my now sadly departed husband, who never failed to make the absolute most of my supreme wrongness in the ensuing years. Heaven help us when the song ever came on the radio. It is to you, Simon, I turn for mercy, for cluttering up your airwaves with my crass stupidity and secretly hating you a little bit for years. I humbly await your judgment. Ginny, and she says at the end, in loving memory of Jerry White, her partner, husband. So, Ginny, thank you very much indeed for the email. As far as I'm concerned, well, I'll go last then. I should go last. But Bobby Pryor, what do you say?
Oh, what a beautiful story, really. I mean, I'm sure lots of us have those kind of band names that we thought were called something else, or song titles. I still call Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody the Pork Sausages song, because as a kid I thought they were talking about pork sausages when they were talking about monstrosities. So it's always been the pork sausages song to me. So I can identify with you, Ginny. Well, also, I love the effort that you put in. Every morning for weeks you were up trying to get through to Simon, and you did make it through, so it was worth in the end. At least you get a crack of it. You were wrong anyway, but you're absolutely forgiven. Well done.
This is one of those times where you're better wrong than right, because the Kilimanjaro is actually a better answer than the Yamo Be There. It's a better, and for that reason, really, the presenter involved should have said, yes, you're wrong, but actually you win.
I could have said something about Teardrop Explodes having a Kilimanjaro. Maybe you're thinking about that.
Yes. So I think it was your fault for not bending the rules a little. Look where that got us. So I'm going to say forgiven, definitely.
Does she get an album token for making it onto the show today?
There is no such thing as an album token, and we don't have that kind of money anymore.
Can't do it anymore.
Okay, what a shame.
I don't know. What can we have? A cup of tea?
No, a mug.
What are you going to do?
A mug. Apparently we've got a mug. Oh, I'm going to say, of course you're forgiven. Of course you're forgiven, Ginny. And I appreciate the email. Thank you very much. I don't particularly encourage confessions with me as the subject.
I do.
But radio quizzes, they're always fun. If you can fit in, it's confessions@bbc.co.uk. Thank you very much indeed for all the confessions. I've read hundreds in the last few days, and there are lots I'd like to read out, and but I can't. But I would just like to say I enjoyed the one very much about the visit to the special doctors and the glittery flannel surprise, and that's
I've got a story in my head now.
And that's all I wanted to press ahead.
Way that's getting through.
It didn't get through.
No way.
It didn't get through at all. But anyway, it was a surprise. Who Who would have thought? Anyway, Mark in Peterborough, thanks very much for tonight's tale. Mark, Father Confessor, Holy Collective, I lay myself at your mercy, beg forgiveness for an act of crass stupidity which lingers with me after 40 years. My tale begins at Weymouth Grammar School, now Budmouth School, in the 1970s, when I was very far from being a model student. I was, however, obsessed with wildlife, and thus my biology classes were among the few that I found unmissable. In the course of my biology classes, held on the 3rd floor of the school, I developed a close friendship with the school's lab assistant. She was a lovely lady who not only provided suitably autoclaved glassware, I mean, you wouldn't go anywhere without that, for all the biology classes, she also diligently maintained the school's thriving stock of laboratory mice, gerbils and crickets. I loved the animal room so much. I spent break times there and helped the lab assistant in her duties. So trusted was I that I was eventually allowed uniquely to spend my lunch times there. Don't frown, Bobby.
Oh, well, I'm just a little bit concerned.
It's fine, don't worry about it. Now, being a kindly soul, the lab assistant would occasionally take in small caged pets when pupils were on holiday. And so it was that one cold winter's day, I eschewed the delights of shivering in the playing field and sauntered into the animal room. The lab assistant was clearly having her lunch and wasn't there. But what I did find was 3 budgerigars chirping merrily in a cage. I immediately fell for their beaky, millety charms. As the lunch hour wore on, I began worrying that the cage looked cramped and that the budgies were calling out to me to let them stretch their wings. Hark, let me listen. Let me out, they were saying. Oi, let me out, was another one was saying.
That was the East End budgie, yeah?
That's right. As there was a butterfly net in the animal room, I reasoned that I could easily catch them again and resolved to give them a momentary glimpse and taste of freedom. The budgies were extremely eager as I gently eased back the wire catch on the door and slowly opened it. The budgies shot out like corks from a bottle and performed an impressive circuit of the room. But before I could wield the net, I spotted the enormous flaw in my plan. The animal room window was open. 2 of the budgies whirled past my head and, seeing the promise of sunlight, headed unerringly towards it with an impressive accuracy given their lack of practice. I leapt forward with agility I can no longer muster, but alas, I was too late. The little green birds shot out of the window and fluttered exotically into the freezing winter air. I quickly netted the remaining slightly dim and institutionalised budgie, which had headed straight back to Chokey.
Yeah.
He was lost without the familiarity of the cuttlefish bone and popped him back in his cage before sneaking out of the animal room like a ninja. Thus, I avoided detection. There were searching questions in class and tears from a second-year pupil the following week, though by then an enterprising and more agile pupil had fortuitously caught one of the 2 absconders. The other budgie, one has to imagine, either flew fruitlessly in the direction of its native Australia, for Australia Day, nicely done, or, I like to think, may have tapped plaintively on a pensioner's window until she adopted him. I think Mark has an optimistic view of the future.
I can think of another option.
Don't go there.
No.
Don't bring us down.
No, okay.
It's a cheery one. Holy Father, I crave your forgiveness on several counts. In the first place, from the lab assistant for abusing my position of trust and lying like a champion. I beg forgiveness from the pupil who returned from holiday in buoyant mood to be crushed into withering sorrow. But most of all, I beg forgiveness from Budgie Kind for having abruptly and perhaps painfully introducing a bird acclimatised to central heating or searing outback sunshine to a harsh and unforgiving world. Well, it was the 70s. Anyway, Mark from Peterborough, I know you thought the confession was going in one particular direction, but it didn't. No, it absolutely didn't. Anyway, he thought he'd let the budgies out the cage. He didn't check the window. Very silly thing to do. Let's check Sister Bobby from the Priory.
Oh dear, it's a bittersweet one, isn't it? Because you can see the longing in the budgies' eyes and in their cheeping that they want to be free. So I understand the calling and letting them out. And it was a genuine mistake, but I think you should have owned up to the lab technician, because he or she would have been absolutely mortified that they thought they'd made the mistake. So I think you should have owned up to it. Having said that, I understand why you did it, and it's a really sound head, and it's really difficult because what were you, 9? and you think, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to be in trouble. And they did catch one of them, which is the lucky thing. And the other one went free to breed with other budgies, and it would all be okay in the end.
That's certainly how it happened, I think.
I think in this case, because you must have been absolutely terrified at your actions, I think I can just about forgive you.
Well, so much for your close relationship with the school's lab assistant. You didn't feel as though you had to go up and say, oh, by the way, that was me.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'll let you take the...
Clearly not. This obviously comes down under the category of what did you think was going to happen? Obviously, they were going to fly out the window as soon as you go. And why? What is this? Oh, I'll let them flutter around the room for a bit. I don't understand why that's happening. But here's the point. That's what freedom is, budgerigars. If you want out, then guess what? It's not going to be warm outside. That's what freedom is all about.
Back in the cage.
Sometimes there are consequences. And look at the budgerigar who was institutionalised. He's still got his cuttlefish.
Yes.
He's very happy and warm. Who's the real winner here? So for that reason, I am going to forgive.
Father Simon and the Forgiving Collective says Howard in Waterlooville, which is very precise.
Waterlooville is a lovely place.
Not interested.
Okay.
But what I'm learning from that is either we haven't changed the name or we should have done and forgot.
Waterlooville is definitely a real place.
Waterlooville is definitely a real place and very lovely.
Yes.
So, this says, my confession dates back to the dark wintry days of February 2001 and involves my youngest son, Lewis. No need for false names. Oh, there you go. And my dastardly deed that emotionally scarred him through his youth. I was serving in the Royal Navy at the time, and we as a family had just returned from an overseas posting to Naples. It was a stressful time for the whole family, but particularly more so for our two sons, Jack and Lewis, who were only 10 and 7, respectively, at the time. Returning from 3 years in a foreign country back to the UK was stressful for them. New home, new school, and making new friends was obviously quite daunting. Their behaviour was on the whole quite good, considering the things that they were having to readjust to, until that is it came to meal times. Both boys had always had very good appetites and had never been fussy eaters. In fact, their palate was pretty impressive, to be honest. On the week in question, back in 2001, Lewis would not eat his evening meal. No cajoling or bribery, the type often practised by desperate parents. There's no pudding unless you eat everything. Or, we won't be going to play zone at the weekend if you don't eat your cabbage. No effect at all. Even there are starving children in the world. That didn't work. That never works, by the way. Absolutely never worked ever in history. He just messed around with his food and picked and prodded and didn't finish any meal. When none of the bribery pleas worked, I informed him that if he did not eat up, I would call the food police. No such thing as the food police, Dad, came back his cocky reply. Oh, well, we'll see, I say. This went on for the whole week until we got to Friday night. The same scenario plays out again. Lewis messing around with his food, me cajoling and then threatening to call the food police. No such thing, Dad, he says, again, cockily. I say, oh, OK, well, let's see. I left the table, I went to the telephone and dialed the pretend number for the Fareham Food Police. Hello, is that Fareham Police Station? Yes, good evening. Could you... Yes, I'm in Waterlooville. Nice village. Howard, yes. Could you pass me to the Food Police Department, please? I say into the phone. Glancing towards Lewis, I covered the mouthpiece and explained, I'm being transferred. Before he could reply, I engaged in conversation with a Sergeant Brown, who was in fact a former Met police officer who sounded uncannily like Ray Winston.
Have we added that? Oh, excellent.
No, actually, that's genuinely from Howard, yes.
Oh, good.
Anyway, so I'm saying, good evening, Sergeant. Yes, I'd like to report a food crime, please. My youngest son, Lewis, he's been messing around with his food all week, refusing to eat perfectly good, tasty food and wasting most of it. I pause for effect, looking at Lewis, while Sergeant Brown replies. Yes, Sergeant, I know. Yes, there are children, starving children in the world. I know, yes. Yes, he should be grateful and eat up. I agree. More pausing. So you're going to come round and take him away for questioning? That's not a problem we're in, yes, see you later. I hung up. Ha, Dad, there's no such thing as the food police, he said. You weren't actually talking to anyone? We'll see, I say. Well, half an hour passes. The boy and my wife Jeanette had left the table, and I proceeded to clear the kitchen whilst they all retired to the lounge. Lewis had by now forgotten all about my conversation with Sergeant Brown and was happily playing with his Playmobil in the lounge. So I quietly sneaked out of the kitchen door, went round to the front door, knocked with a very loud policeman-style knock. Our eldest son, Jack, answered the door. I did my best copper voice, as previously mentioned. Good evening, son. My name is Sergeant Brown from the Fareham Food Police. It's a little bit more common in Fareham as opposed to Waterlooville, which is all smart and lovely. I've come to question, I consult my book, Lewis Cooper, is he in? Well, Lewis, who was in the lounge with his mum, apparently froze. And according to my wife, the colour drained from his face. Not so cocky now then, eh? Says loving Dad.
Yeah.
Before I'd entered the lounge, he had dived behind the sofa, trying to hide and evade arrest. Oh, good evening, Mrs. Cooper. I'm Sergeant Brown, Fareham Food Police. I'm looking for a Lewis Cooper. Need to question him regarding a crime against food. This is what I'm saying as I'm entering the lounge.
Yeah.
Apparently, he's been messing around and refusing to eat his meals with so many starving children in the world. Get that line again. We look upon this crime very seriously. I do need to arrest him and take him away. By this time, we could hear sobs.
Oh, no.
Crying coming from behind the sofa. I could no longer keep up my quite impressive impersonation of Sergeant Brown. And so we all fell about laughing. Sobbing, he comes out from behind the sofa. Dad, you shouldn't have done that, he says through his tears. Well, you shouldn't mess around with your food, I replied lovingly.
Lovingly? Yeah?
As I hugged him.
Yeah.
His tears quickly subsided and our laughter died down and all was forgotten. So, Father Simon, I need forgiveness, please, for inflicting the fear of arrest on Lewis at such a young age, and also for the times I've told the story since and embarrassed him. The most recent being is at his 21st, when I regaled the story in front of his closest friends, including the lads who just qualified with him as a Royal Marine.
Wow.
The deed has backfired somewhat on me, as since the incident he hasn't stopped eating. He's 6'4", 17 stone, rugby-playing Royal Marine who eats us out of house and home every time he comes back. Payback time, I suppose. Father Simon, it was very funny, but I do need your forgiveness, if that's okay. Howard from the smart end of Waterlooville, what do you say, Sister Bobby from the Priory?
It's a tricky one because I'm all for sometimes extreme measures when, children are borrowing things that are not theirs or maybe taking extreme risks and you have to do things to go, OK, I need to put a stop to this. But it does seem like a really big step too far because I was trying to work out is why he wasn't eating because previously he had. So
It's
how did
'cause
he go
it
to
was
the
the-
chip shop or
No,
wasn't he
it was-
interested in the food
it was
or he
the
just didn't
fact they
like
were
cabbage?
just back from Italy and they
and
were
he was
slightly
a bit
disrupted.
right, OK, because he didn't really seem to do too much wrong. I don't know if you made your little boy cry and also you kind of told all his friends and I don't think I can forgive you. This time you are unforgiven.
Harsh but fair. Let's see what Matthew
I
makes of
love
it.
this story and I'm going to forgive. But the two things I love most about this is number one is
My accent?
Is obviously the accent, but number one is the fake phone conversation where people when they're having fake phone conversations always repeat what the other person has just what's that you say you're coming round? What's that you say? The starving children? What's that you say? It's always the same. Why are you just repeating what he said? And the other thing I love is that when people tell these stories, they always say them, oh yes, he replied cockily, and I said lovingly. And right, okay, that's how it worked, is it? Definitely painting yourself in the best light. Right, so I am definitely going to forgive, just for those two reasons.
Right, well, here comes tonight's confession, which comes from PC Chummy. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Father Simon and the Holy Collective. See what you make of this. As an ex-fireman and policeman, it's never an encouraging way to start. I respect firemen and policemen, but their confessions often don't get read out.
No, for good reason.
That and military, doesn't happen. I have a lot to ask forgiveness for, but this is what came to mind first of all. It's the summer a few years ago. I was a policeman at the time for a coastal city in the south of England. I was also tall, handsome, unprofessional, and annoyingly already starting to recede in the hair department. The unruly streets of London were being unruly again, and so who did the Met call but me and my super colleagues? We were keen, reliable, and most importantly, not on holiday. So me and my colleagues are bussed up on our mission to, as in bust, as B-U-S-S-E, they're in the bus and they're not busted.
Right, sorry, okay.
Buzzed up.
We're in the bus and we're taken up on our mission to save the capital. The A-team are off to London, or more like the E-team, I think, but anyway. After a number of exchanges with the members of the public over the first few nights, a number of exchanges with the public. Everything was going well. Even the accommodation was okay. Mouse and rat free, flushing loose, and a fizzy drink machine on every floor. What more could a copper want? One evening, we were rushed to a particular part of London. Although we were in a hurry to get to the scene, we decided to quickly stop off for some grub because we were hungry. Now, immediate conflict there. So clearly there's something really important for the police to attend to. It's really important that they get there.
But we're going past a chippy.
I am quite hungry, and so just before we get there, we'll get some food.
You don't want to deal with a rat on an empty stomach, do you?
Anyway, PC Chummy says, what a choice you Londoners have. Anyway, I treated myself to a real selection of goodies, including some pasta, a large Granny Smith apple, some more pasta, and a rather large Spanish chorizo sausage that I was planning to enjoy at the end of the shift. I believe it was of Spanish origin, not from Mexico, as it was smoky and red with stacks of paprika.
Oh.
I can smell the beauty even now.
There you go.
See, we kept it for you now.
Yeah, that's great. I can see why.
So later, there we are, out of the bus, working hard and sorting out crime, as we are paid to do, when my colleague, who we shall call Ray, spotted some bother.
Okay, I've just got that. Yeah, go on.
He spotted some bother that... I've changed an awful lot of this, by the way. He spotted some bother that necessitated the possible use of his baton. As Ray reached for his baton, for a possibly needed show of strength, he realised that it felt slightly different to normal. He didn't have time to mess around, so he drew whatever it was and waved it about in a threatening manner. This is written like a police thing, isn't it? Yeah. As you might have realised by now, in place of the universally recognised symbol of police authority was the lovely Spanish chorizo sausage that I'd purchased not 1 hour before. The youths that he was challenging looked a little perplexed as to why an officer was using this rather delicious sausage from the Basque region rather than the conventional truncheon. I then swear I heard an onlooker shout to his friend, "Here, John, is that copper threatening him with a sausage?" I bet you didn't, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Ray is nothing but professional and continued about his business. The sausage proved a useful weapon in the struggle for London's streets, although Ray did say to me afterwards, "If I find out that was you who swapped my truncheon for a sausage, you're in trouble." But actually, Ray never did find out who it was, or why the wonderful Basque Spanish sausage was in his belt, but it was me. As we bussed up and we were waiting for Ray to finish in the food shop, I saw his police belt left on the floor containing his baton, his cap top, handcuffs and so on, and the chorizo sausage I'd purchased not 3 minutes prior fitted the holster perfectly. So if you're wondering how it happened, it was me, Ray. I am very sorry, but at least you're a groundbreaking copper. Charcuterie has not been used in the daily struggle against the forces of disorder before you. So for this team, I'm very sorry. I have since eaten chorizo and I continue to enjoy it. Can I ask you not to mention my name, as some colleagues still work in the force? Yours, PC Chummy. Gosh. Well, you know, it's an interesting thing. I took out so much from that. Could you notice the little edit points?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's crime non-specific, I think. But the heart of the matter is this. When he needed his baton, he had a 12-inch chorizo sausage in his hand, rather than whatever a baton is made from. What do you think of that, Sister Bobby? Peace-loving Sister Bobby there.
PC Chummy, you're at work, you're on duty, you're in a position of authority, you're absolutely 100% not, I say not, forgiven. You could have put your
not forgiven, she's
colleague
saying,
in jeopardy. I hope if you can actually prove that it actually kind of diffused the situation and was a moment of humour so everyone just could take a breath, then you're forgiven, but absolutely not.
You don't want to be hit with a
work.
sausage, though, do you?
Not in those circumstances, no.
No.
Not forgiven.
What would be the most dangerous sausage to be hit with, Nigel? Do you think? What would be the
well, it's quite interesting because the Spanish one, which is the air-dried one, is much harder than the Mexican one, which you tend to cook. So if he produced a Mexican sausage, he'd have gone all wobbly. So he would have been known as PC Wobbly Sausage.
Yeah, that's no good.
Which wouldn't have been good at all.
So basically,
he was all right. But chorizo, yeah, this is.
If you're going to draw a sausage in a moment of crisis, the chorizo is the one that you should have.
If it's got a staple at the end, even better.
We're not in a clown circus routine. Then it's funny, and then you have the wobbly balloon sausage thing. This is really wrong. They're on duty.
But as you say, Sister Bobby, that we hope that it did diffuse the situation and went, oh, look at they're attacking us with sausages. Everyone,
and the crime instantly was sorted because everyone thought this is a hoot.
Yeah,
we actually are in a circus and not on a crime scene.
Thank God it wasn't the pasta.
Anyway, Brother Matthew, what are you thinking there?
Yeah, my limited knowledge of chorizo doesn't look anything like a baton. How is he
a long 12-inch one with a hook?
This Ray can't tell his baton from a chorizo sausage. So I would say that part of training involves can you tell the difference between a baton and a chorizo? Yes, I can. In you come.
You're a policeman.
Yes, and he couldn't. So more fool Ray, really.
Ray's fault.
Ray's fault for not being able to tell his baton from a chorizo.
Well, they were this week's Confessions. Who did you forgive? Let us know. Plus, your own story. Confessions at bbc.co.uk. More in a week. And don't forget, you can listen to all our interviews again on the iPlayer. And the iPlayer app, by the way, what a thing that is. So you can listen to radio. You can listen to this every single day, all the way through the weekend. You could treat it like a box set. Anyway, on Monday we had Simon Sebag Montefiore, top historian, talking about his huge new book, The Romanovs. A little bit of War and Peace about that. Tuesday, comedian Mark Steele talking about his new live show, Who Do I Think I Am? Top talented, charming actor Jason Isaacs was in on Wednesday to talk about Rio, I Love You, which is a new movie from him. And finally, Nigel on Thursday with his French tartiflette, don't you know? Recipe to be found on my Radio 2 page. Anyway, everything is all online. Thank you very much indeed for downloading us. We'll do it again next week.